I Googled my way to the top. Google has sort of been.
No shame in that. That's resourcefulness.
When I got my second job, I Googled. When I got my third job, again, I Googled. And for me, it was even when I wanted to see what the career path would look like, I would ask Google, I'm like, what is this career path? Like, what does it lead to? What are the different things that I can? And I was very focused on like actual output because I wanted to be sure that the output was something that I could use. And a lot of times, like I would have an idea in my head. I would say, okay, what would we call somebody who does A and B for C and D without touching this? And Google would give me a name for that. And then I would go on to understand what they looked for in those roles and see if it was something that resonated with me.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to What I Do for Work, the podcast for ambitious people who want to build the careers of their dream. I'm your host, Anita Patrick, and throughout this series, I'll be speaking with hardworking people in diverse career paths about the work they do, what it entails, and the kind of effort, sacrifices, mentality, and everything in between it took to get them to where they are now. Today's guest is a multifaceted entrepreneur. Her name is Irene Aguh. She's one resilient, hardworking, and determined maven. She works in travel and marketing industries, and she has built businesses in both and with clients that transcend the shores of Nigeria. So if you are thinking about leaving your 9 to 5 to build a business, or you've already started and you want to know what it takes, then this episode is for you. So Irene, welcome and tell us a bit more about what you do.
Hi, my name is Irene, and this is what I do for work. I'm an entrepreneur. I run two businesses, a travel company and a marketing as a service company. My travel company is called Rivi. Rivi is a concierge company that serves the Nigerian markets and helps Nigerian travelers travel better and travel in a more simple, more efficient way. For Irene Leo, the marketing as a service company, it provides digital marketing services, but bite-sized pieces to companies that need our help.
It's amazing. How did you what made you decide to go into to different industries? Travel and marketing, they are not exactly I would say you could say they're complementary, but they're not exactly in the same field. So how did you make that choice?
I started in marketing, even though my travel business came before my marketing company. I've always been a marketing person. I worked in account management, I worked in strategy. I have worn many marketing hats. So when I think about my career path, it just went up the marketing path. For travel, travel happened at some point during my marketing career. I really love to travel. I love figuring out what to do. I love just exploring. And because of that, I thought, okay, how do I help people who want to explore but don't know how best to do it? It's sometimes it's a matter of money, sometimes you have the money, but then you prioritize other things and then you see other people travel and you're like, I want to do that. I'm here to help you do that. So that's how it started. But then it just blew up into a full length concierge company. So my two passions are alive.
Okay, that's really good. Someone was born out of a desire or a need you noticed in the market. The other was just based on your background. So you mentioned you started in marketing. Well, you are still in marketing, but your career began in marketing. I'd just like to know, how did you make that transition from okay, I'm doing a 9 to 5 to I'm starting a business now.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think that if I think of the way that my life has been, there have been sort of defining points. If I think about even my career path when I worked a 9 to 5, there'd been defining points. I thought, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I need something that excites me. That's how I fell into strategy. From strategy, the obvious like execution of strategy became marketing and business, which were two things that I went into. But at the point where I decided I wanted to work, like I wanted to work for myself, I had sort of done a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I remember that career-wise, I wanted to, be a member of the C-suite. I wanted to grow very high. And I always told myself that that was me, that I'm a career babe. I'm always going to be a career babe. However, in 2020, when COVID hits. Terrible year for many, but I feel like COVID was a reawakening for me. And I started thinking a bit more critically about where I wanted to be within the next couple of years, what I wanted to be doing, how much I wanted to be earning, and what currency I wanted to be earning. Now, obviously, because I was already working a 9 to 5, it meant I was thinking along those lines. However, one of my thought processes led me to start Irene Aguh then. And just having the two businesses up and running, I had teams on the ground. I had very efficient people working while I was working a 9 to 5. So all I needed to do was provide some level of support, but not like the level of support I would have been able to provide if I wasn't working a 9 to 5. So after a while, I realized, okay, look, we've been doing this. We're earning money. We're doing really. How do we then scale? To scale, it required my time, it required my energy, and there was no way I could do that with a 9 to 5. So I sat down and thought about one, how much money I'd be losing, because what I think a lot of people don't understand when they leave a 9 to 5 for their company, you're not going to be earning as much. Also, you're the one paying the bills. You're paying salaries. You've been paying salaries, but it's different when you're paying salaries and don't have a salary of your own, right? Because you then have to make that salary. So I had to think, am I ready to do this? Is it worth the risk? How much have we made within the last 2 years? If everything shuts down and like things became very hard, how much would we still make? So it was a very, very like calculated decision to leave my nine and start my own companies. Well, continue my own companies.
Okay, I really like the sound that because it's just that you thought through the whole process. You didn't just make a blind jump from doing 9 to 5 work. You didn't just decide I'm tired of working for the big man, so I'm going to stick it to him and I'm just going to venture off on my own. I like that. You even already had people on the ground because sometimes when people start a business and they're doing their 9 to 5, usually it's a one-man thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to work, then I'm going back home to do this other business and everything. So it's really amazing that you had that support at that infant stage. How did you find that kind of support?
We grew into it. When I started alone. However, for example, with the travel company, you have people that are used to reach out to me. They'd say, okay, hi, Irene. Is there some sort of collab? I started seeing a need for help because I was unable, like I worked a 9 to 5 that was taking my 5 to 9. So I was working 20 hours out of a 24-hour day. It meant that I didn't have time, which is why COVID was such a defining year for me because COVID was the year where I took back my transportation time. Now, in that time, I started thinking, how do I bring people in? Am I able to bring people in? What would this look like? I'm one of those people who believe that if you cannot afford something for at least 6 months to a year, don't invest in it. It doesn't make sense to bring people in and you can't afford to pay like salaries or some sort of, you know, for the period for the next 6 months or the next 12 months. So I did that math, and luckily, I had people that were willing to go with me. I have very brilliant people in both leagues. I have people that have made just carrying that business way easier than it would have been if I did it on my own. So I think that it's two pronged, right? It is luck because it's really hard to get people that are willing to carry your dreams as far as you're willing to do them. But it's also just planning, right? You also need to be able to plan. Now, it means that you're not going to be earning as much because you're going to be splitting earnings. But again, I also learned to work a little smarter. So beyond the full house team for both companies, we have groups of people when we need them.
Yeah, that's really kudos to you, really. Really, I'm sure there are also people who are going to listen to this and feel like, wow, that's the dream. But again, I want to go back to what you said about planning, about being prepared, because like I mentioned, and like you actually emphasized, you took some time, to plan how you're going to make this transition. And you mentioned, affordability, like earnings and being able to, pay for things. And I would like to know, what other things were critical for you? in making that transition?
I think that for the transition, there were two big things that sort of stood out for me. It was one, sort of testing product market fit for both companies. Because, a lot of times we create businesses because we think that's what the market needs, but that's not what the market needs. So the time that I'd spent working my 9 to 5, but building the companies, or like building structures that my team could use to build the companies, meant that testing out our product market fit. We were testing to see, okay, who is our audience? What does the audience want? Is this really what they want? How much are they willing to pay for this? So there was a lot of like strategy that went into just figuring out if we were doing the right thing. And I think that another thing was I told myself, because I have a big fear of failure. That drives a lot of the things that I do. Meant that me saying that I was going to step away from the executive, level of my career or whatever it was that I was doing at that time, to start my own thing. It meant that I needed to understand that I wasn't failing. So it wasn't a failure. I needed to push my mind beyond that to think, okay, what are the possibilities of what I'm going out to do? Now, failure also then came in, or the fear of failure also then came in when I started thinking about the business, because what if I fail? So I had to sort of change my mindset a bit and understand that if I fail, I failed. That's it. I failed and we will start again. And I remember that I started making a joke about how if I failed, worst thing, I will go and open up a shop in Ladikbo, you know, because so that was it. And I think that I also needed to consider like my actual, so beyond finances for the business, I also needed to consider my personal finances, right? Everybody has things that they spend on every month. It might be family, it might be school, whatever it is you're spending on, you also have to figure out, okay, look, are some of these things that I can drop? Are some of these things that I can maintain? At what level can I maintain them? And am I willing to, work and earn at bare minimum for a while before it gets better? So when I did all the math, I, looked at the market, I said, okay, this product is tested and it's trusted because it's been running for the last how many years and it's been performing well. So it means that even when it performed well through the, the hard COVID years, we just sort of showed that, these were companies that had a proper like foundation. So at those points, I'm like, okay, we have an audience, we have a market. And so all we need to do is do it well. We can go.
Okay. Okay, you talk about, establishing product market fit, and, I know that that's not something a lot of people think about, because at times you might just be like, okay, I want this thing, so it means other people will want this thing, or I want this thing, and my friend wants this thing. So I think lots of people want this thing. You understand? Or sometimes you might even hear a lot of people say, no, don't want this thing.
I want
When you actually start that thing, you would realize that some people are all talk and no action. So I'd like to know, someone who's just starting a business now, they might not have resources to do like extensive market research. Could they, basically go about establishing a product market fit?
say do it. A lot of times, people take research to be the final frontier. It's not, it's the beginning. You don't have to have a lot of money to do extensive research. People will tell you, oh no, I would buy this if you open this. I would buy this if you sold this. It's a lie. A lot of times, it's a lie. It's like put your money where your mouth is. So I think that it's very important to execute very quickly. It's very important to not waste too much time doing research. It's very important to not waste too much time asking people what they think or what they would do, because what people say and what they do, totally different things. What you want to do is actually just start it. If you want to start, for example, a business that sells books to young women that think, oh my God, girls like books. But then you realize that they don't like books as much as they say. But the only way to know if they really like books as much as they say is actually tell people I'm selling books. Now, you need to be a bit strategic about that. I don't start companies with a lot of money. And the reason I don't do that is because if I put a lot of money, so it means that I don't necessarily, for example, if I was talking about the book business, I don't have to have the book. You're selling, for example, a CRM solution. banks, right? I would say go and put a CRM solution and see if they're willing to give you money. They would tell you, yeah, we're ready. When you're ready, come. It's fine. We're ready. We're ready.
That makes sense, especially like when you're starting and you need to really keep costs low and not spend unnecessarily. It makes sense to not spend money doing things that you could achieve in more creative ways. I understand that. And money has come up a lot in this conversation. And I do want to get back to that later on. Let's talk about, maybe your biggest money lesson for entrepreneurs. But before we get to that, I want to go all the way back. I want to go all the way back to the beginning. Say your final year of university. What did you study? Did you did you see yourself doing this kind of work that you do now? Like maybe when you were thinking about what I want to be when I grow up, was entrepreneur on your list, So let's go all the way back.
So I studied English, French, and Chinese. And I remember studying that because my mom said, just do anything. Just do anything. Just graduate. Initially, obviously, like every other Nigerian, I wanted to go into medicine. I'm so happy that I didn't do that. I would be such a terrible doctor because it takes away your life and your energy.
Good.
In the world. I wanted to be a doctor and I thought, I might specialize in pediatrics. But, things just kept happening. Schools were on hiatus. Programs I wanted to join, things just weren't, aligning. And that's sort of the way that my life works. If things aren't aligning in one direction, I go the other direction and that's where I'm supposed to be. And in this case, I remember my mom told me, look, a lot of people do things outside what they study. You don't know what you're going to be doing. Just do something that you can do something that other people are doing, and do something that, I'm like, okay, great. And this is very much unlike what I've heard other Nigerian parents tell their children, which is it has to be science, it has to be this. My family is very supportive. Now, when I was in school, I remember that I asked them, I said, what can I do with this course? And everybody told me, oh, you can do anything. So I went through all my
Okay.
years of school thinking I could do anything. And I finished. And remember what we say about people saying something and doing something completely different. I finish. And then I say, I'm here. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to do anything. And what I hear is, how about being a French teacher? I'm like, I'm what? I don't have a problem with doing. But I do feel like teaching requires a certain level of patience, requires a certain level of understanding. Good teachers are very good at like psychology, a bunch of things that I didn't feel like I was great at. And I'm like, oh yeah, but you said I could do anything. I want more options so that I can figure out what I want. But I think that then sort of got me thinking about what next, right? In my mind, I've always known C-suite executive running like businesses on the side or something like I didn't know what it would be, but just top of the chain. That's where I wanted to go. So I sat down and I thought, okay, what are jobs that I can apply to and what are jobs that other people are applying to? Thankfully, which is what's interesting here, is you sort of tie into my origin story. Thankfully, I met a friend of yours that I met through you, and I was just randomly talking, and I say,
Yeah.
"Hi, I'm looking for work. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm looking for work." And she says, "Oh, we're hiring writers." And I think you were already working there, been working there for a year. And I came in, I did the thing.
Yeah.
And remember what I said about my life always just sort of like leading me in a different direction. They didn't give me the writing job. They gave me an offer, the offer, and then I come
Yeah.
to
I
negotiate,
remember that.
and they tell me, "Oh, we're very sorry, we made a mistake." And I'm like, "What do you mean you made a mistake? Do I have? I don't have the offer?" And they're like, "Oh no, you have an offer, but we put the wrong title. We don't want you to be a writer. We think that you should be this other position. That we think that we need somebody that will be this, that will be that, and you fit the profile." I'm like, okay, thank God I still have a job. It didn't have anything to do with what I studied. It just, was a function of a bunch of things coming together for me.
Chance and opportunity. I've been ready. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then you've been able to. Oh, continue.
I said it probably helps
You
that,
want to say something?
don't speak English.
I mean, it came in handy. It did. It did. Yeah, it did. It did. It did. That's funny also to me because, when I was in university, I did a lot of writing, but it didn't even occur to me that people wrote for a living. Like, it just did not. I thought you had to be an author. Even though I would go online and I'd blog and I'd see, like digital news, but somehow it's just not really ingrained in my head that, you could write for a living. So even sometimes I'm so shocked that my first job was, writing. So, but yeah, again, chance and being able to speak English really did come in handy. So back then, you have been able to use that first opportunity as a launchpad to, where you are now. And you mentioned that, even right at that time, you still had this ambition to be at the upper level, to be some kind of executive. So how did that influence your next steps, your progression from that first job to subsequent jobs?
So at every point in time, I think I was always looking at what's the next thing. I was always thinking about, where my career path could lead me, right? It's like, for example, if I'd become a teacher, I would have no problem. So that's the way that I think. Now my career progression, it was, you know, account management. From account management, I listened to a strategist talk, and I'm like, I can do that. I like to think, and I like to tell people what to do. Brilliant career choice for me. So I went into strategy. From strategy, I got the opportunity to work again in account management, to do some finance work, and basically just learn a ton of skills that I have been using. Moving from strategy to marketing was an obvious thing because for me, I was looking to leave the agency life. I used to work in advertising. And in hindsight, there are like three places you will go if you're a strategist. It's like you go to marketing and communications, or maybe you go direct. I want to be. From there, I started thinking, what's bigger than the head of marketing of something? And I became the global head of marketing of something. I even got offered this thinking, where can I grow to? And one thing I realized later, just looking back in life, I realized that some of the things I do now, nothing about them, but there were things I thought were interesting. For example, when I was in university, I met a guy that worked in advertising. Is advertising. I'd never seen Mad Men, never seen anything. But like I just thought that was cool. And I'm like, I'm gonna work in that. And 10 years later I'm working in advertising. And it was the same thing with strategy. It's like I keep saying I like telling people what to do and like just looking at things from the outside point of view, and that's what strategy was. So a lot of the things that I ended up doing were things that I'd always liked. For travel, I watched the guy from Home Alone, and his father was an ambassador. And I said I wanted to become an ambassador so that I could travel. Found a way.
At every stage, you kept asking, or you kept thinking about what's the next thing, that will get you to where you want to go. So, when you're in this whole mindset of, what's the next thing, what did you look to or who did you speak to? Because you mentioned speaking to someone. And, it actually even brings me back to like, the whole point of this podcast. Exposure shapes choice. And, when you speak to anyone, what you're doing now, it started from seeing someone doing that thing or hearing about someone doing that thing. You didn't watch Mad Men, so people watched Mad Men and I said, I want to get into advertising. You didn't, but you met someone who was in, and then it made you think I could get into it. And there are so many jobs out there. There are so many opportunities out there, but a lot of people don't know about. I'm trying to. I'm trying to bring more exposure into different career paths. I just want to, bring more exposure into what it takes really. So now I want to go back to, what you said about always thinking about the next thing. Every time you thought about what's the next big thing, did you maybe speak to someone? Did you have a career mentor or something, or someone to say, oh, this is why this is where I'm trying to go. What should I do? Should I take a what do you call? Should I take a course? Should I take certification? What was your system in approaching, how to think about the next step?
I would say that, so I've never been one for like mentors. However, I Googled my way to the top. Google has sort of been.
No shame in that. That's resourcefulness.
When I got my second job, I Googled. When I got my third job, again, I Googled. And for me, it was even when I wanted to see what the career path would look like, I would ask Google, I'm like, what is this career path? Like, what does it lead to? What are the different things that I can do? And I was very focused on like actual output because I wanted to be sure that the output was something that I could use. And a lot of times, like I would have an idea in my head. I would say, okay, what would we call somebody who does A and B for C and D without touching this? And Google would give me a name for that. And then I would go on to understand what they looked for in those roles and see if it was something that resonated with me. So yes, Google was my mentor, my confidant, my research partner, my
Thank you, Google. I mean, I actually relate to that, like I was always Googling a lot. I think a lot of people would actually admit to doing that because I think our generation, we've sort of had to like DIY our careers. So yeah, you mentioned a lot about you always looking for the next thing. Yeah, that could, get you closer to your goal. And well, we all know that success is, it's not a destination. It's a whole journey. And, I have spoken with people who have, I wouldn't say confusion, but I guess they have often thought about at what point do I stop chasing, and at what point stay content in where I am. Now, I know it sounds weird to say that out loud because now it sounds like being complacent, but I think it's a thought a lot of people wrestle with because these days we're putting a lot more effort into building our career, a lot more than people who came before us had to. There's a lot of hustling, there's personal branding. There's so many things you have to do to be visible, to get a job or to advance in your career. And so some people often feel like, oh, maybe this is too much for me. Or maybe I should just be happy with like a job that's not a career that's not so grueling or arduous. So I don't know if that's something you've ever thought about.
to think about this, but over the last 2 months, I've thought quite a bit about it. And that's because I listened to a podcast where they talked about the difference between an employee and an entrepreneur, and also just, acknowledging where you are in life. I think they use an example of a farmer who doesn't seem like he earns a lot, who doesn't seem like he has a lot going for him. And some guy who's working a white collar job comes and is telling him, oh, you know what? Here's what you can do. This is how you should do this. Lock this up, save this amount of money, put this to work. And the farmer asks him, okay, you know what? That's fine. To what end? And he says, oh, so that you can buy yourself some time and freedom. You can have time to spend with your family. You're free to do whatever you want. And the farmer says, but I already have that. And that just goes to show that at different points in our journey, we have actually hit the goals that we worked for, that we wished for, that we prayed for. But because we're so focused on what the next step is or what we think that life should look like, we forget to enjoy or savor the moment, right? So I think that there needs to be a balance between ambition and just sort of experiencing the journey. It's not all about success. It's not all about like hitting whatever goals you've set, because the honest truth is the goalpost will always move. We keep moving the goalpost the older we grow. We keep moving the goalpost. The more exposed we get, the more we see, the more we want, the more the economy, worsens. So it means that you need to find a way to continue to enjoy the journey. You need to find a way to be present in the moment, to make sure that you're not going to regret in 10, 15 years all that you've done, right? You're not going to look back and say, look, I should have done this more. I should have done that more. You want to do everything right now, right? So we need to find that balance between our ambition and the experience of just, life and, just enjoy the journey. That's it, honestly.
So what about I spoke with some young entrepreneurs to understand what their needs are so I can come prepared for this interview. So people spoke about dealing with self doubt, the feeling of am I really doing this? Or should I be doing this? Should it be me doing this? um Wondering, what advice do you have for people who are dealing with self doubt and how to, work with that emotion as an entrepreneur?
I think it's a bunch of things. First is you're here. You're here because you belong here. You have this idea because you can. Do you understand? Second thing is if you try and you fail, so what? You can open up a shop. You can sell something. You can like you can learn a skill. There's so many things you can do. It's not the end of life. As long as you're alive, you're good. So if you fail at that, just always need to remember that every single person is walking around just trying to figure this thing out. So you're not the only person who's walking around with self-doubt. Every single person is. I wake up sometimes and I think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But then I have to remind myself, good at this point to sort of give flowers to my friends and family because every time that I have thoughts, what am my friends, and I'm talking about you included, you had to pull me up, right? You had to tell me you were doing amazing. And I'm like, but no. But the honest truth is,
That makes sense. But I do have that's a question I'm forgetting. Yes, money. So I feel like money as a goal. Like money has come up a lot in this conversation here, and I just want to know. And money is important. Money is really important. I just want to know what money lessons have you learned on this entrepreneurship journey that you think would be helpful to people who are also starting out, or people who are also starting out on this entrepreneurship journey?
there are two big money lessons that I think every business owner or every entrepreneur sort of has to know. And sometimes they seem like they're contradictory, but they're really not. The first thing is that you have to be really frugal. You have to be really strategic about the way that you spend money. You have to know that, look, that you're starting a business doesn't mean that you have to hire 10 people to start doing 10 things in the beginning. That's not very smart. And the reason that it's not very smart is that at that point in time, your business isn't making any money. You don't have any profits. You're just starting off. So it means that you're paying out of pocket. So you don't need as many resources to kick off. You need to figure out what exactly are the most important things for this thing to start up? What's the most important thing for me to build like a minimum viable product or business, right? The second lesson is that at some point, not necessarily at the beginning, at some point, you have to start spending money to make more money. So when you're looking at scaling, when you're looking at growing, most times you find that you need to then put in some more money. But again, the strategy comes in. You need to know that before you spend money on a certain thing, before you spend money on a certain resource, whether human or otherwise, you have to consider what are the benefits of paying for this? What are the benefits of investing money into this? What's the return on investment going to be? How is it going to contribute to my earnings? The reason is because if you start making money and you think, okay, I need to spend money to make money, so I'm going to hire 10 people now because we're now making money, what you realize is that you keep cutting out of the pie and there's no money left. When it comes to startups, startups have a bit more leeway and they can take more risk. And the reason that they can do this is because they have money from investors. So it means that they can actually push for growth a lot faster than a traditional business or a business that's self-funded would. But again, they also then have to remember that you're owing investors money. Like the money that you're spending needs to go back to these people somehow, right? So as a business owner, you need to be very smart about the way that you spend the money that you have, whether it's money that's given to you, whether it's money that you've earned, or whether it's money that's coming out of your own pocket.
I have two more questions. Then we'll wrap up. Want to go back a little bit. Because I feel that we did not talk about, what it is to be a travel, things that are peculiar to this that people need to, know if they are trying to maybe work in hospitality or work in tourism, maybe work in marketing.
So if you're trying to work anywhere, I think again, first thing for me would be sort of actually try self-training. The reason I say try self-training is that it will save you spending money on courses. I've actually never had to prove to anybody that I had any course that I've taken. I've just the work that I have done has spoken for me, which is a good thing. Career paths like accounting, where you have to have like specific certifications for some of these creative professions. It's not as rigid, right? It's a nice to have, but it's not as rigid, and you tend to get a lot more experience from actually being in the field. So I think first thing would be try self-training, try sort of figuring out if there are contributions that you can make that will put you in the field. So for example, there's an internship somewhere or they have like some shadowing role, you will shadow the person and you will learn from that person. I think beyond that, you also then have to start finding other little ways beyond like internships to start contributing or to start being a part of, the industry that you want to be a part of. So, for example, for both industries, I've realized that they require some sort of problem solving, right? You need to have a problem solving mindset. You need to be creative so that you can find creative solutions, and you need to be a very quick thinker, very proactive, very quick thinker. So I think those are three skills that I think that have sort of crossed the border between both of them. But when it comes specifically to each individual like path, you then now start seeing a bit more like, oh, you need to know how to use these tools. And the way to know how to use these tools is to one, learn from people that are using them online, but also see if there are people that you can support in some way that will let you learn as you're working with them. If you want to get into, for example, like the travel business, you don't have to go all in and say, oh, here's what because the travel business, just like marketing, there are different parts. You have to decide what you want to do. The moment what we do is we run a provider business. We're basically at the top working with agencies, we're working with a bunch of people, and we're just bringing the entire ecosystem together. Now, for example, what you could do is you could sign up to be like a review affiliate, for example. You try, selling flights, you try selling like a bunch of things, pass the business on, handle it, you get your commission, but that way you're learning about things like that. And I think it's sort of the same applies to marketing because if you think about marketing, there's multiple things you tell some people like content creators and people like graphic designers. So there's a bunch of things to think about. Just have to start testing a little to see what actually interests you and where your skills actually lie. Because it's something that I say it's like before you decide what you want to do, you actually have to figure out well, um, are you good at? What do people say that you're good at? Whatever you at the intersection of these three things is probably where you sit.
So my last question to you would be, looking back at your journey right now, you've done a lot of wonderful things. Are there anything you would change? Like knowing what you know now, is there anything you would change or you would do differently? And how has this entire journey shaped you as a person?
I think that it would somehow tie into I had like a year and a half of what I consider some level of inactivity, right? And the reason I consider it some level of inactivity is because it was a year and a half where I struggled. It's not like I didn't already know what to do, but it was like the fear of taking those steps. I kept thinking, well, if I so I would push myself to do more. I'll push myself to do more faster, and I'll push myself to change things faster.
Okay, this was really insightful, and we've talked about a lot about your journey, about your ambition, about how you had this big picture in your head, even though you could not quite define the details at different points in time, and how your curiosity and your drive, push you to keep going for the next big thing in order to, get you to where you are now. And I think, some aspects of your story that I'm actually just hearing about for the first time today. And, it just makes me really proud of you and, everything that you have achieved, really. And I'm really, really, really so happy, to hear about this because it's not easy. It's not easy to do these things, Some of this might look glamorous, some of this might seem easy. I think at times make it look easy, really. So, I'm just really proud of, everything that you've achieved, really. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to wrap up. What are you currently reading, or experimenting on?
Um, I'm currently reading on Black Sister Street. I've been reading it for a little while. What am I currently experimenting with? I'm interestingly playing around with like JavaScript and PHP, using like a bunch of videos and AI
She's
and
coming for
stuff to
tech
just like
jobs.
put cool features that I like, and just so that it can be that I did something with my own hands. So that's what I'm currently experimenting on. But great.
Okay. Love to hear that. I'm going to wrap up now, and you can find Irene on social media on LinkedIn, and you can find her brands, Brand Ravi and Irene Leo on LinkedIn. I'm going to link them in the show notes of this podcast. So thank you everyone for joining this edition of the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please spread the word. Tell us what you like about it on social media and tag us at What I Do for Work, or use the hashtag WIDFW podcast. Share it with your friends, share it with your mentees and serious people. Also, you can give us a review, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. If you'd like to be a guest or have suggestions for the podcast, there'll be forms in the show notes that you can fill. Thank you for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another inspiring conversation. So until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building. Bye bye.